Chris Binch, former paratrooper, boxer, firefighter is the new term, isn't it?
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah.
What kind of childhood did you have, Chris?
Well, I'm from Nottingham, a suburb of Nottingham called Arnold. Nice little town. It's got its bad points and its good points. Grew up there. Grew up in the 80s. Good time to be alive. Like every other kind of kid at that time, out on bikes, climbing trees, getting into scuffles and stuff like that. Mum and dad, working class. Mum worked in like a textiles factory. My old man were a bus driver for 35 years. Until he got attacked on the buses, he lost his sight in one eye and then started up a kind of business, gardening and stuff like that, bless him. So yeah, I had a good upbringing. No real faults really. I was a bit of a git, I'm not going to lie. Bit of a kind of trouble. Trouble seemed to find me. I don't mean like criminal activities, but like getting in scrapes and getting in, stuff that kids do at that age. But as a whole, pretty good childhood. But like I say, I was a bit of a pain in the arse. I'm not going to lie.
You were in 2 para.
I was, yeah.
I get that right.
Yeah, 2 para.
That's a blue flash, isn't it?
Yeah, blue DZ.
Yeah.
Joined at 17 years of age. I wasn't always going to join the paras. My best mate, still my best mate to this day. He's just left Special Forces. He went down that route. When I was 15, I did a kind of week with the Worcestershire Foresters, which were like our local regiment. And right up until the day before we joined the military, that's what we were joining. And he was a bit like, I've been reading about this unit called the Paras. And I went, well, what do they do? And he was like, well, nothing much more, little did I know. Probably just the jumping out of planes bit. Oh, that sounds interesting. So yeah, that's where we ended up and started, a few weeks later, did the whole kind of sort of training bit to make sure you got the fitness.
Yeah.
And then turned up at training 1997.
Well, that catering?
Yeah, well, Lichfield was back then where you did your basic training, and then you kind of went on and did your phase 2 at Catterick.
Is it still a 28-week basic?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I mean it was then.
What did your parents think though when you said, I'm going to be a para?
Well, see, my old man wanted to go in the army, but he had problems with his feet when he was younger, so he could never get through the medical, bless him. So my uncle did 25, maybe even 30 years in the military, kind of left as a major from a private soldier. My uncles, my granddad, they were all in the military. So it was never really set in stone for me, but it came to a head. I was 17. I ended up in a bit of a scrap and I ended up getting glassed in the face. I ended up with 16 stitches, broken nose, fractured jaw. And that was a bit of a turning point. Yeah. So my dad was a bit like, he ruled the house with a rod of iron, quite rightly so. And he was a bit like, right, you either join the army or I'm going to kick you out and you'll probably end up in prison. So that's how it kind of come about. And they were really proud of me that I was going in the military and it helped me shape me and turn my life around.
What were your memories then of actually, your first day Catterick?
Oh, well, first day Lichfield with the basic, it was just a shock to the system. Yeah, a proper shock to the system. Obviously a lot of screaming and shouting, a lot of press up straight away and, getting beasted in the corridors by the staff. But I kind of took to it all right. I never found the fitness side easy. And I've always been quite open about that. I struggled because I've always been a big lad. I were about 85, 90 kilogram when I was 17. So the running aspect, I found kind of difficult. You had all these racing snakes about 11 stone that would take off on these runs. But you stuck a burger on my back, I tended to be all right. But I didn't really have the discipline side because I always joked that it were easier in basic training than it was living at home when my old man would rule in the house with a rod of iron. I'm joking, Dad, if you see this. But, the kind of, the fitness side I found quite difficult. But taking to sort of using weapons and being out in the field and being out in the sticks and all things military, I really enjoyed. And it was good, yeah.
Yeah, you just get one little glimpse, don't you, of what basics like Catterick. But how tough was it? I mean, it's supposed to be the toughest course in the army, isn't it, for basic?
I believe so. Obviously, I'm a bit biased because that is my unit. I'm very passionate. Even now, I've been out 20 odd years. I'm really passionate about the parachute regiment. I've got a lot of time for it. It was hard. I'm not going to lie. And I think people underestimate. I tell people about P Company, which is obviously the selection process to get into one of the final things you'll do. And it doesn't sound that hard, but you know when you're already quite a few weeks in, and your body's breaking down. And I always say that the lads that were 21, 22 that went in, they probably found it a little bit easier. They'll probably disagree if they see this, but their bodies are a bit more developed and you're carrying a bit more muscle. If you were 16, 17, you're still developing. And there's a lot been done now to change that and recognise that injuries were kind of a common thing. So half the battle was if you got through training without an injury. So you know what I mean? If you kind of made it without... I used to wear this. I never used to tell people this because I was a bit kind of ashamed of it. But I did P Company 3 times because I failed twice. And then I kind of went on and I passed it the third time. And through just not accumulating enough points and kind of injuries and stuff. And it was the third attempt that I got through, which made it extra special for me when I got that berry because it was looking a little bit like maybe I won't get it. Third time.
It's good tenacity to go bike and do it third time.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. I did have my wobbles. I think after the second P Company, I was contemplating transferring to a different unit because I didn't think I could do it. And one of the staff actually showed me a bit of a human side because they're like, you look up to them like gods when you're going through training, and they're like, you know, you imagine them or you see them, and looking back now, they're not, but they're like all big, you know, mustaches. Some of them were Falklands veterans.
Yeah.
One of them showed a bit of a human side and took me in the office, and he just said, look, he says, you can do it. He says, if you don't go through with it and you transfer a different unit, for the rest of your life, you'll be thinking, what if?
Yeah.
So I said, right, give it one more time. And I passed. So, yeah. The courses are designed for you to get fit as you go. As long as you turn up with a decent level of fitness, you will get fitter throughout the course. And I'd say by the time you're ready for P Company, you know, you are fit enough to do it, but it's the body. And I suspect it's no different from the Marines. Your bodies are starting to break down. You know, you've got shin splints for a common practice, kind of muscle tears and stuff like that. So if you could get through without that, you know, you were probably on for a pass, but it is what it is. But what a lot of people don't know, there's people always go, oh, P Company. After P Company, you do an exercise, and it used to be called Advanced Wales. When I ran it, were called Dynamite Mole.
Oh yeah.
They take you to, I think ours was, I'm sure it was Brecon, or it might have been Otterburn, up in near sort of Newcastle way. But you get a bit of ground, there's kind of 4 or 5 of you, and then you dig a trench to the height of the tallest person, and you do not stop digging, no sleep. You still obviously eat and drink, but you don't sleep until it's the height. And it was about 5 days of sleep deprivation. And I remember cows in a field starting to resemble tanks, little dips in the ground. Everyone were trying to walk around thinking they were massive because you start to hallucinate.
Yeah.
And I after that, I'd passed that. I came back home. You get like a bit of a weekend off. And my hands were in surgical gloves with all antiseptic stuff in because my hands were just blistered. The mud had got in my skin, they were black. I'd lost about a stone in weight. My mum burst into tears on the doorstep. She was like, what have they done to you? So yeah, I mean, it's and after that bit, then you then go on to the Bryce Norton, and it's like Slipper City at Bryce Norton. You see how the other half live, the RAF, with their lobsters and their steaks and stuff like that. And it's sort of 4 weeks of parachute jumping at Bryce Norton, which is, for some, it's enjoyable. I'm not going to lie and say I enjoyed parachuting because I didn't. There's not many that do. But
are there many really? Because you're about 6'2", aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know a lot of paras, but they're all kind of my size.
Yeah, you get difference. There are some lumps in there, and usually, if you're a big lump, you get lumbered with the GPMG. And again, I didn't realise at the time, perhaps, but looking back now, it's a bit of an honour to carry the GPMG because it's kind of a weapon that's needed. It's your fire support. So I was GPMG gunner for 4 years when I got to 2 para. So
I think it was called P Company of Channel 4.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was quite a while ago, wasn't it?
God, yeah.
Was it 80s or not? Yeah. I have seen that one as well.
Yeah. And obviously, DS from that were Falkland.
No, they were scary, They were scary individuals to fight. And there was a few knocking around still, like I said, I was 97 when I joined. And there was still a few knocking around then that were like platoon sergeants or colour sergeants and that. And yeah, they were kind of intimidating figures. You didn't want to cross them, put it that way.
No.
Yeah.
What was traineeism like then?
You never had a problem with it. I've not got a fear of heights. That for me was the easiest event. You could speak to other people and they'll tell you it was their probably worst event. For me, it was always the log race. Now, again, anyone that knows P Company, the log race, it doesn't sound that difficult. I think it's 3 miles, sort of 6 you're carrying a telegraph pole, but you're encouraged to run as fast as you can.
Kindly.
It's your heart and lungs, you cough up a lung at the end of it. It's horrendous. And because I'd done P Company 3 times, when I was sat on the 4-tonner wagon going out to do the event, I'm sat there in silence, pale. And some of the other lads that had never done it were like, why do you look so nervous? And I'm like, you'll see. You will see. And it was horrendous. But yeah, all the events, I tell this one quite a lot. You mill, the milling.
Yeah.
You fight someone for a minute. Now, I did P Company 3 times. I milled 5 times. So I milled twice on the first P Company, twice on the second P Company, and once on the last P Company.
But nobody wanted to mill against you.
No, well, and what I've learned over the years is I can punch hard. I can't box or nothing like that really well, but I hit quite hard. And so I beat 2 guys in the first milling, stopped them. Same again in the second. So by the time I come to the third P Company, my nickname from the depot staff was Hammer Hands. So I was a bit like, I'll take that. As a young lad, you're like, I'll take that. However, fast forward in turning up at Aldershot in 2-para with a nickname, Hammer Hands, at 18 years of age, when there's a lot of airy arse paratroopers knocking around, it's not a good nickname. Yeah, not good at all.
So when did you know that you were going into 2-para?
I think the way they kind of did it, they looked at who was short, which battalion was short, and I always wanted to go to 2-para, whether that's the case now, but at the time it was like the one that everyone wanted to go to. It was kind of one of the most famous ones through battles that it had been involved in over the years. So yeah, they just kind of said the whole platoon is going to 2-para. So off we went, 1990. I think by the time I passed out, it was early 1998, I think, down to Aldershot.
When you got to Aldershot then, what kind of a culture shock was it? Like that?
Yeah, I'm not going to say bullying, I'd say character building, because it's not, I understand it a bit better now, being a bit older. But as an 18-year-old turning up at Aldershot, and obviously Aldershot was the home of the Parachute Regiment for years, the blocks were nearly falling down, and they were terrible, the accommodation. There wasn't a lot of money in the army in the 90s, because not a lot had happened. There was obviously Northern Ireland happening and stuff like that. So I rocked up at Aldershot. I remember all the old sweats hanging. You kind of marched up. You arrived there and then you marched up. All the old sweats hanging out the window, with a fag on, looking down at you, and you're like, oh God, what have I let myself
What have we got here?
Oh, exactly that. And then you rock up in the block, get issued your bed space. And it was fine, it wasn't, you had people, they were intimidating figures, but they were willing to teach you, they gave you your time. But I remember Thursday nights, so everyone went down into Aldershot, and you had to wait almost to be invited if you were a sprog, if you were still classed as a bit of a Joe before you became a Tom, as it were. And you just kind of, I remember some guys going to the car park, sleeping in the cars on a Thursday night because of the chaos that had ensued in the blocks. And there'll be guys that are watching this will be smiling because they'll remember the Thursday nights in the block in Aldershot. And I never understood it, but the block would get trashed. There'd be loads of random civvies walking around as well, where blokes had brought like girls back and lads had tagged along. So we had about a big block party. And then the block would end up getting trashed. And then I never understood it because we had an inspection Friday morning. You do a P Company 10 miler Friday morning, everyone was still drunk. And then you kind of had a block inspection before you got stood down for the weekend. And there were posters put up just to cover holes in walls and stuff like that, I never remember there being any toilet doors on any of the toilets. So you'd be sat on a toilet staring at someone having a shower. It was just the way it was. I don't think it's like that now, but...
Oh, yeah. Probably a bit...
Very bit different now, yeah. I did 18 months in Aldershot, and then they kind of up sticks, and I think it changed from 5 Airborne Brigade to 16 Air Assault, and they decided that the new home for 2 and 3 para, I think initially 2 para, my unit, and then 3 para came along 6 months or a year later. That might be, I'm not 100% sure on that. So 2 and 3 para were at Colchester. And that was a shock to the system because Aldershot, as much as Aldershot is a good town, there wasn't a lot of pubs, not a lot of sort of people, as it were. And then you went to Colchester, clubs, pubs everywhere, a bit of a uni kind of.
Yeah.
So it was interesting as a young paratrooper to go into this town with loads of bars and nightclubs and stuff. It was an eye-opener. It was good, but we got banned very quickly from a lot of places. They'd never seen anything like it in Colchester. Apparently crime went down, as in like burglaries and drug dealers and stuff like that, because the lads wouldn't stand for it, so to speak. So that's a good thing.
Well, every time I went in the 90s, there'd been trouble, cops, call out, all this thing. I just found, lads having a laugh, aren't they?
Yeah, we were just boisterous. And I always said that you train these guys up to be kind of, I know it sounds corny, but in effect, kind of machines and sort of soldiers that are going to go to war and be aggressive. And then you can't just flip a switch when you're out in a pub. And again, it's not till you look back, you kind of become more chilled and you kind of realise, but at that age, you're still quite aggressive. And
you're not going to get squaddies wanting to go to theatre.
No, of course you're not. We might do nowadays. I don't know. I don't know how it's changed. It's been a long while. But yeah, no, Colchester was good, but they kind of had to put some of the well-known characters throughout battalion on some of the doors to deter sort of scrapping and stuff like that. And then the Royal Scots were there for a little bit before Free Para came, so we had all sorts of to-dos with the Royal Scots Regiment units and stuff like that. So interesting times.
Yeah. What kind of extra training did you do for weapons? And
so you'd have a bit of a schedule. Most days, you'd be doing weapon handling because it's kind of massively important. You drilled on weapon handling till you kind of blue in the face, So I was a rifle company. I was D company, 11 platoon D company for my whole time I was in 2 Para. So that's your kind of, and I never specialised in anything. I never went across the support company or anti-tanks or any of that, or patrols. I stayed in D. I was happy in D company. I had it kind of wanting to go on maybe a sniper course or a patrols course at some point. But yeah, rifle company, so you kind of SA-80, your GPMG, your 51mm mortar at the time, and your kind of law anti-tank weapon system, which I think the 51's not used anymore, and I don't think the law is now. That they've kind of changed. I wouldn't have a clue what they use nowadays. It's been, like I say, it's been a long while. Yeah.
As paras, you think, well, bread and butter is jumping out of planes, but that has changed so much, hasn't it? It's Chinook drop, usually, or even land insertion. You kind of, the air assault bit realised that there probably wasn't a necessity for kind of massive airborne drops. I still believe they've got the place. Whether they're ever going to be used in the future, I know there has been some kind of off-the-record jumps into Afghanistan, so I hear. I don't know how true they are. But as far as operational jumps go, I think the last one were back in the 50s, the Suez Crisis. So that's how long ago it was. But yeah, it kind of moved into that kind of off the back of helicopters, quick reaction force in on the back of a Chinook and everyone piling off. Still a good way to insert troops, but obviously that's just the change in times. I pretty much went straight to battalion and we straight on Northern Ireland training. We were prepping for a tour of East Tyrone, so Knocknacloy, Dungannon, places like that. And yeah, so I went pretty much, I think I had a couple of weeks at Aldershot and then down to Kent, where you do all your kind of NI, Northern Ireland training, run through range packages, kind of contact drills, all this kind of, there's a little village down there that you go and practice in and all that. Kind of month, I think it was 4 weeks, kind of intensive training package, and then deployed to Northern Ireland at sort of 18 years of age, East Tyrone. It's been a bit of a fruity history, hasn't it, in Northern Ireland, the paras?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you know what? I think by the time we went out there, the late 90s, there was still potential for stuff, but they were fairly quiet tours. I think early 90s, late 80s, it were quite kind of tricky out there. But I think by the time I went out, it started to calm down. It had started to calm down, like I said, but it was good for soldiering.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because you were flying around, getting dropped off by helicopter, you were having to navigate yourself around the cuds in the dark, putting in vehicle checkpoints. So as far from a soldiering perspective, it was very good at honing your skills and making you a good soldier. So they had their place. But as far as like kinetic or as far as kind of incidents, I think we stopped some players in vehicle checkpoints. I think it was a bit of a mouthful. You had like the Police Service of Northern Ireland, or the RUC as they used to be called, would usually chat to them and deal with them, and it, you know, that'd be it really. But they were long. They were 6 months, you know, and they were a long kind of tour.
How many tours did you do in Northern Ireland?
So I did 3. I did 2 6-month tours, and then I did a short stint, sort of from November to January, purely because I wanted to save for my first car. So I used it as a way to go out there and save money, because you can't spend anything out there. So I saved some money and come back and bought my first car off the back of that. I think it was a 2-month tour. Yeah, so over Christmas. No one wanted to go because it was Christmas. Like, I'm young, single, sod it, I'll go. So yeah, 3 tours in Northern Ireland. Interesting times.
Were there any more kind of? I know you said it wasn't as so kinetic as it had been.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't a kinetic time. So I was. It was busy though. It was busy. So I did 2 overseas exercises. One in Belize in the jungle, which was a really good environment, challenging environment, and again good for soldiering. I did an overseas exercise in Canada. Again, live firing sort of exercises. So really, really good. Got a really good R&R package at the end of that. Sort of did a bit of a road trip around parts of Canada. Really good. I was lucky enough. So one para got deployed to Sierra Leone in '99, I think it was, 2000 maybe. Basically, have you seen the film Blood Diamond?
Yeah.
It's kind of based loosely around that time. So yeah, we D Company 2 para ended up getting attached to 1 para because they had a company in Jamaica on an exercise. So we got called off leave. I was actually in Tenerife 24 hours before with my best mate on the lash, having a great time. And then I got called back. So I'd gone from, I think I literally went from being on the lash in Tenerife, 24 hours later I was patrolling in Freetown, Sierra Leone with a hangover from hell. So yeah, I was like 40 degree. I was like, what am I doing here? Yeah. You know? But again, it was a good trip. So yeah, Sierra Leone, that were about 5 weeks. I did Macedonia when they did the weapon collection. Again, great for going out in the hills, putting in overwatch as all the rebels were kind of handing in their weapons and stuff. And then I did one of the first tours, if not the first tour of Afghanistan, in Kabul.
How did you find the jungle?
I like the jungle. I really, really, and it is a harsh environment.
Beats Doncaster.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know. I can't comment. I don't know Doncaster. I'll take your word for it. But you know, the jungle, and it's not suited to everyone. And some of the younger lads, I mean, I've seen younger lads. I was only sort of 19, but the jungle comes alive at night. It's really noisy. You know, and it's a dirty environment. There's a lot of people, if you cut yourself, you can get an infection in it. You know, you don't really shower, you start to smell like the jungle. And some of the young, smaller lads that were great at running, you know, how we were talking about how they used to leave me for that in the jungle, because I'm a big lad and I had like reserves, as it were. I was GPMG gunner in the jungle as well. And I was kind of all right with it. Pack on the back. It was hot, it was sweaty, but I just cracked on and I enjoyed it. I did enjoy the jungle, but it is a harsh environment, but it's good for sort of personal skills. You've got to have them. You've got to keep on top of your feet, you know, because if you don't, you will go down with trench foot because they're wet. You've got to change your socks. You got to be on top of your admin. When you're cold, wet, tired or hot, sticky or whatever, it's easy to just sit there and go, but you've got to keep on top of it, you know. So yeah, it's good.
Extremes is like the Arctic, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I never did the Arctic. That seemed to be 3 paras thing for a period of time, and then they stopped it when I don't know whether they started it again, but I know the Marines are heavily do sort of an Arctic tour. Yeah.
Why would that have been more a 3 para thing then?
I don't know. I don't know. It's just how it fell, but I remember 3 para doing a couple of Arctic tours, and we never got a look in with that. I don't know why. Again, I might be getting that wrong how I remember it, but I'm sure that was the case. And I think 1 para were away from us at Dover. They were based at Dover, after Aldershot, because they were in Aldershot with us and they went to Dover. But yeah, I'm certain it was 3 para that got the Arctic for a period of time. So we never got that.
Mm-hmm. What was Macedonia like then, Chris?
No, it was good. It was a good. Like I said, we were putting in. So I don't know if you can remember what the sketch was of that. They were trying to disarm. It was off the back of that Kosovo. It was all the same sort of the Balkans area.
Yeah.
And they were trying to disarm all the rebels that were still in fighting and stuff. So yeah, they were kind of big amnesties handing in weapons. So they'd set up in a sort of a valley area and have big ISO containers, and then these rebels would come in and disarm them. Yeah. And we were like overwatch for it, so we'd be up on the hills in OP positions, kind of keeping an eye on it in case anything went wrong. And it didn't. It was good, but we were out in the field for maybe 5-6 days at a time, and then we'd go back and stay in this big sort of factory, sort of cot beds on all of us under one roof in this factory. Mm-hmm. You know, not great conditions. And I remember popping down the road. We were on rations, camp beds, rations, boiling the bag jobbies and all that. And then remember going down to the road to a Yank camp, and they had a mobile Burger King in there. That was a mile down the road. And we were like, what? I've been eating bacon and beans for, Yeah. So yeah. Throughout the 90s, early 2000s, when there was stuff happening, but there wasn't a lot of money being pumped into the British Army. You know, I remember the platoons being sort of really undermanned. There weren't a lot of people in the platoons. People were leaving. And it wasn't until sort of 2006 sort of Afghanistan tour, Sangin, southern, Helmand province, that I think there was an injection of cash because they realised they were proper fighting down there and sort of fighting with the Taliban. So they needed that injection of money. And that's when they started to get the kind of kit that we'll know the army now that they have. And there's no secret. We all had our own kit. We bought our own stuff because the issue stuff was shocking. Your boots would fall to bits on and op. They would. So everyone bought their own kit. And I like that because we looked... Everyone were individual. Everyone had their own sets of webbing that they bought. Everyone took real pride in buying their own kit. And they'd monitor, they kind of alter it and make it how they want. Or they'd take it down the tailors and it'd come back with extra pouches on, and you'd be wearing SES windproofs and stuff like that. So we were very proud of wanting to look
Ali,
yeah, without a doubt. And that was the thing. And you look at a lot of the rest of the army, and I think they've developed that now, the rest of the army, but they kind of, looking back, they'd all wear the issue stuff, and then we rock up like a bunch of band of mercenaries, and we love that, it was great, with a big overhanging of berries and stuff like that. So.
The inglorious bastards.
Yeah.
You went into private security work, didn't you?
Yeah, so I did 7 years in the parachute regiment. I meant to kind of make it a career. I was always looking at doing 22, and I did I got promoted to Lance Corporal quite early on. Yeah. I got offered juniors from a full screw, but I kind of, once I have, and I'll probably come on to it with my brain and having ADHD, I get bored very easily. And I was never wanting to be sort of a one-trick pony. I've got nothing against... I admire the guys that have done 22, 30 years in the army or whatever, but I never wanted to be a one-trick, but I always wanted it to be about the experiences. So I kind of got wind of, through guys that I know that had gone on selection and spoke to, and they were like... And my best mate, again, he got out for a small period, the guy that's SF, and jumped on the close protection sort of stuff in Iraq. And it was pretty hush-hush at that time. No one knew about it. So I got wind of it, and I was like, I fancy a bit of that. Really good money. So I got out, did a couple of crappy jobs, kind of builders, merchants and stuff like that, while I was trying to get out there. And I went for an interview down in London with a kind of an ex-officer from the Guards. Had an interview. It was like, they never really took people that were kind of under 25, certainly under 30 in a lot of cases for insurance reasons. And I was sat there at 23, 24 years of age. And he was like, I don't know. He says, I like what you've done. You've done 6 operational tours. You're a Lance Corporal. He says, I could use you. And then he says, who was your OC? So I told him the name, and he said, I know such and such. I went to Sandhurst with him. I said, give me a minute. Went out the room, made a phone call to my old OC. Come back in, he says, when can you start? So he gave me a gleaming reference. So I went out there for a week, got in a fight with an Australian SES bloke and ended up smacking him and then got sacked. So my old OC were like, really? I've just gave you a recommendation to go out there. I was still a bit hot-headed. Yeah. This kind of echo throughout. I don't even recognise that person anymore. The thought of scrapping nowadays really does nothing for me. But back then, you know, I was quite hot-headed, a bit frustrated maybe. And yeah, I went out there. He was a bit of a bully. Tried it on with me, and I just ended up filling him in and getting sacked. So
nice one.
I had a bit of a, and he was a bully. I know I'm not that sort of person that he was an arse, and he was a bully. He tried it on with a few people, tried it on with me, and I weren't going to stand for it. I don't like bullies. Ended up filling him, getting sacked, and that put a bit of a black mark against my name on the close protection industry. So I had a bit of time at home, tried my hand at being a prison officer for a little bit. Did about 12 weeks of that, realised that weren't for me either. It's just confrontational, not very nice. Yeah. And I'm not despite what I've just said, I'm not a confrontational. I don't like that. I avoid it at all costs. So yeah, to go into that environment with prisoners wasn't for me. So I attempted to get back out there, back out to Iraq doing the close protection again.
What were you told just after you'd twatted the Aussie SAS chap?
When you mean when I filled in, when we had this sort of scrap?
Yeah.
So no, actually a mate messaged me to remind me of a fact when I spoke about this once before. So we were all dressed for this kind of drill with sort of weapon handling drill. Because you do, most of these companies, you do a bit of an induction course where they test you on weapons and a bit of fitness and stuff like that. So we're doing these weapon things, and I rocked up late. There's a good reason for me being late. Someone had an altercation, and my weapons were taken out of my room. Nothing to do with me. I was on the internet to my ex-missus at the time, and weapons had been removed out of my room. So in the morning, I'm searching around trying to find, because back then you just kept your weapon under your bed. It weren't like, there weren't armories. It was dead blasé. That's all changed now. So I'm hunting around trying to find my weapon. And I rocked up a bit late, and I went straight to her. So I apologise for being late. I says, obviously you're aware what went off last night. I've been trying to find my weapon. And you were a bit like, it's not acceptable. Who do you think you are, kind of thing? And I was like, no. And I was dead polite. I am a polite person. And it kind of escalated. And he went away and sort of grassed on me, as they say, I'm going to get you sacked, sort of thing. And then he come back and he walked in this room, and this was an accumulation of things. And he walked in this room and smirked at me. Well, I hit the roof, so I ended up getting an altercation. And what this person messaged me who were there that reminded me, as we were rolling around on the floor, a grenade fell out, and this is a true story, a grenade with a pin in fell out of his kind of kit, or a smoke grenade or whatever it was, stopped rolling. And that's when everyone thought, maybe we should separate them now. So yeah, I was pulled apart. Before I left, before I was kind of, I didn't actually get sacked. I quit before they had a chance to sack me. But I spoke to him in the mess hall before I left and said, look, I apologise. I says, you won't admit it, but you were being a bit of a dick. And he was a bit like, I made him peace, shook his hand, and I went away. So I made $2,000 for the week. That'll do.
Not bad. So when you went back, what kind of was it a motley crew, or did you know kind of a few people? Yeah,
so there was a guy, his name's Barney, he's ex-Pathfinder, and he set up a company. I'll not name any of the companies for a few reasons, but that it provided sort of close protection for another company. I can tell this company, it was a company called Blue Hackle, set up by two ex-Hereford lads, two SES blokes, top blokes, and then 3 officers from like a Scottish unit. That's where the Hackle bit come in. Blue Hackle was part of the name. Yeah. We were some of the first teams on the ground. I got a job sent out. It was low profile PSD, so cutting around in sort of Ford Mondeos. It was kind of like a new. Everyone that were doing the close protection then were in 4x4s, sort of high profile, trying to race through checkpoints. Everyone is aware, horns. You know, here we are, move out the way. And this was a fairly kind of, because they were SF, they thought, well, hold on a minute. We could transport clients in inconspicuous kind of, conspicuous, whichever the word is, vehicles, and probably get less attacks. But I was one of the first teams out on the ground with them. So I did spent quite the early months bringing vehicles in from Baghdad International Airport, down route Irish, into Baghdad. Route Irish was quite famously known as being the most dangerous road in the world for a period of time. And I think one day I went up and down that in a non-armoured Mondeo about 8 times, fetching weapons, fetching kit, fetching other vehicles from the airport. Totally not even realising what I were doing or what the road were like.
Was that the same strip that Trevor Colt got?
Yeah, Route Irish. There's quite a famous incident with the Edinburgh Risk Company where they kind of got ambushed from the side, and I think they ended up with 3 or 4 dead. It was a nasty road, but it was walls either side of it and built up areas, perfect ambush. The US troops for a while didn't use that route because it just got hammered. So I'm just cutting around up there with a beard, shemag around my head in a Ford Mondeo at 24 years of age. So I thought it were loads of fun. But my turning up, this is how it differs from the army. So I rocked up in Baghdad International Airport and someone just handed me an AK and went, "Have you used one of them before?" And I was like, "Kind of." And he was like, "Right, okay, here's a magazine, load it up when you get outside and jump in that vehicle. Are you all right if we get hit?" Or I was like, "Yeah, I think so." And that was my introduction. You know?
Where do I put my duty free?
Yeah, my fags and my bottle of whiskey.
How long was that for then, Chris?
So I worked for that company for, probably about, I want to say 18 months maybe.
Yeah.
All in different places, trained local nationals in weapons and first aid, sort of got them ready to be part of the low profile drivers and stuff, or sort of some of them went on to become security guards. We kind of vetted them and looked at them, their qualities. Some that were Iraqi army we used as drivers because they had that military kind of knowledge. Yeah. It's not kind of to the same standards as Western militaries, but you know, some of them are really good. Yeah. I mean, a few close calls. There's been a running trend throughout my kind of life from 17 to present day where I've been in the like wrong place at the right time, or vice versa, whichever way you want to look at it. But something's happened for whatever reason and it's resulted in me not dying. So it's like I'm a cat that's had like 9 lives, and it's weird. And it, you know, one of them incidents, I kind of you had an inner checkpoint and an outer checkpoint to the green zone. Yeah. Outer checkpoint was local national Iraqi soldiers. 50 meters, 100 meters back was a US call sign. So if anything hit, it hit the outer checkpoint first. Yeah. So I had to sign in the local nationals on this particular day. It was my turn. And you always sign them in from the Iraqi side, the outer checkpoint. On this day, for whatever reason, the Iraqi army had let them come to the American checkpoint. So I'm walking up to sign him up. As I'm signing him in, a massive car bomb, V-bed, went off at the outer checkpoint, killed 17 people, blew us off our feet. And if I'd have gone and signed him, you know, and I can't figure out, so it was like a bit of a guardian angel moment, you know. So, yeah, it was interesting. Because we were setting it up, it was a busy time. They were busy, a lot of fetching kit. And then that progressed on to, so we were based, kind of, the main contract was on Taji Air Base, kind of in, just escorting sort of electricians, contractors, sort of in charge of local nationals they were. So, like, you know what I mean? They had maybe 10 or 50, or probably more in most cases, tradesmen underneath them. We'd escort them for meetings and to look at sites around the Iraqi side. So it was a fairly steady contract. There wasn't a massive amount of risk. There was a lot of mortars and a lot of rocket attacks that I remember quite well. But we used to sit on the villa roof and have a beer and watch the kind of mortars and listen to the mortars. It was just a dumb thing.
What brought that to a close for you then, Chris?
Again, I kind of decided, I did sort of 6 years on and off in Iraq, and I always say that because I used to like to have a bit of a break from it, you know. It got a bit, you know, the rotations were like 8 on, 4 off, which sounds fine, but for the 8 weeks you would be grafting solidly, especially in the early days, and you were getting hit and there were rocket attacks and stuff. So I always thought, well, I don't want to expose myself to it as too much if I can have a break. So I come back for a few months, I'd do a few bits and bobs, probably work for my cousin who were doing a bit of groundworks and stuff like that. And then I'd get another contract and go back, because the contracts were easy. You could just go for an interview and, you know, you get picked up as long as you had a bit of experience about you. So yeah, I had a few months back home, and then I went out on convoys with a company called, back then they were Armour Group. Again, I think they're no longer existing. I think it's G4S took over them now. Yeah. Went out on convoys, which again was interesting.
Breaker.
Oh, the convoy, yeah. the convoy. So we used to run convoys from the Kuwaiti border up to Baghdad. Probably 10, 20 trucks, and then we'd have 3 gun trucks, as we used to call them, which were like the Dodge Ram or the Ford Explorers or Ford F3 150s pickups. So you'd have 2 local nationals on the back with weapons in like a built-up kind of cage, as it were, with steel welded on it. And then you'd be the commander, and then you'd have a local national driver. You'd have 3 of them, one at the back of the convoy, one in the middle that would go up and down.
Yeah.
Keeping them together, and then you'd have one at front, like almost like a lead scout, and then you'd have to drive up from Kuwait, and then you hit that like an alleyway, as it were called, EFP alley. So the EFPs were like the shaped chargers that pierce armour, and everything would go really, really quiet on the radio between them points, between the bridges, and everyone would know that's where we're at, because it doesn't matter what your vehicle you're in. You could be in a tank, and one of them EFPs will take you out. A lot of these trucks with the close protection as well have bolt-on armour, which just turns into, if you get IED one of them, the bolt-off armour just comes flying off, and the inside probably does more damage than a little. So yeah, it's the convoys was interesting. And that was a graft, because you'd end up sleeping in your trucks. You'd get to a place called Scania, which were deemed halfway between Qasr, the port in Qasr, and Baghdad. So you used to get the convoy there in the first day. Sometimes you get there at 10 o'clock at night, end up sleeping underneath your gun truck on a cot bed in 35, 40 degree, and that was nighttime temperatures. So yeah, you didn't get showers, and it was I used to joke about it, were like the PSDs for the fannies, as it were, or for the wimps, and the convoys was for real men. But it was good, and I ended up running convoys as well from kind of Baghdad out to I think it was the Jordanian border as well, past Fallujah and Ramadi and places like that. So, yeah, we're good.
So what kind of year was you drawing that to a close?
Well, that was, 2007, I believe I were out there with them. And then I had a bit of a break again, and I went back with another company. Now, this contract is absolutely ridiculous. All true. Through a company called Aegis. Again, there's some companies I left out, but these are kind of common practice. A company called Aegis, very well-known contracts, sort of close protection company, very professional, really good standards, fitness tests and everything. So a lot of the guys were really, really good, sort of hand-picked, so to speak. And the contract was so everyone was on close protection on the Op Matrix contract. And then they set up a sideline contract called Op Tourist. It was nicknamed Op Tourniquet because it was dodgy. Three Land Cruisers, one had a camera on top. And we literally filmed every single street and MSR in Baghdad area at about 30 mile an hour. Now, anyone that knows the close protection industry, the most dangerous place you could be on is the road. These close protection teams used to go out for 3 hours. We were at 8-9 hours filming. So we got smashed. We got smashed on that contract. Got ambushed on Boxing Day 2008, I think it was. We got ambushed. Pulled into a marketplace, and my gun truck took multiple gunshots. I've got a video of it somewhere. Wow. My rear gunner Matty ended up shooting 3 insurgents dead. Started traversing us over rooftops and firing down on vehicles. I mean, at the time it weren't exciting, but looking back, it was a good buzz.
I've seen that in a movie.
Yeah, but I've got the video. The guy that sat aside of me had a camera taking pictures, and he dropped the camera and it hit record. So I've got that recording of all hell breaking loose, and it only goes on for about 2.5 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime in this busy. And we literally pulled around the corner, and I thought, well, it should be quite busy. And no sooner as them words go, oh, it's quiet, we got smashed. And that was the kind of thing that went on. And another incident, on a particular day we went out, I was meant to drive the rear vehicle. I always drove the rear vehicle on this particular day, I swapped with a guy. No reason. He said, "Do you want to swap?" I said, "Yeah, right." I drove the front vehicle, or I might have even had that day off. I can't remember. But then he got RKG 3'd, handheld stick grenade, took the door off and fragged him through the legs. And he's still in a pickle with it now, about 15 years on. And that should have been me. And just on the cusp, just by him going, "Do you want to swap?" And I was like, "Yeah, right, yeah, no worries. Well, I'll drive the Alpha wagon." So another incident there that kind of, for whatever reason.
Another life.
Yeah, but yeah, I kind of did that. And then I went backpacking after that for 7 months before I went back out on my final contract. And I was on the Colonel's, who's now in the Pentagon, or he was, well, after he finished on that contract. I was on his CP team for the same company, and escorting him all over the country. He kind of, his CP team were British, so we had one US Marine. I've actually done a podcast with a top lad called Jake, lives in Vegas now, an ex-US Marine. He was the only kind of American on the team, but the Colonel were happy to use the Brits, and he wanted to travel everywhere by road, never used helicopters, so we were up and down the country. There's not many places in kind of Iraq that I've not been with the Colonel's team, and I've certainly been everywhere in Baghdad. I've got footage of me bogged down to the axles in human shit in some of the places I've been, that the people would look at you, they've never ever seen a Westerner in person before, so it were quite surreal. So I've been kind of lucky in kind of the aspects,
but a bit like Bradford.
Yeah. But yeah, it was very, very interesting times, and I'm very, very privileged to have worked in Iraq at that time, because it was like a golden era of it. The money were good, there was incidents, there was rules, but they were a bit more flexible, and that's not to say that we kind of exploited that, but it was more, they were on your side, rather than if you did something wrong, they'd jump all over you. They back you up. If there was an incident and you were in the right, they'd back you up. Whereas now, rightly or wrongly, you're under Iraqi law. So as you can imagine, that creates its own dramas. But yeah, no, I had a bit of a break, went backpacking for 7 months around the world, and then went back on a final contract. And then I decided to call it a day, and it was one incident, driving down south with the Colonel's CP team. And so what they do is they target the rear vehicle with the handheld stick grenades, just so there's no one in front of it to then, shoot them. And I saw this guy, again, in hindsight, could have probably drove the vehicle at him, but I wasn't quick enough. It didn't register quick enough. Stood at the side of the road, hands behind his back, and he launched an RKG-3 grenade at my door, and it bounced off my door at waist height. And again, that had to come straight through the door and cut me in half and probably killed me. And we ran into a US call sign on the way out, told them about it. And then that night in the DFAT, they came over to us while we were eating and said, "Yeah, we went out, we found it. The pin had been pulled. There's no reason why it shouldn't have exploded." And there was a big dint in my door. And I was a bit like... So after that, I think I had another 2 weeks. My lad was born 5 weeks early. So I came home and made the decision not to go back. Just 6 years of it, had enough. Called it a day. For a long time, I had what I thought was depression. Not a long time, a few years, where I'd have these lows. But then my fiancée, Hannah, she pointed out to me, we've been together about 6 years, and she kind of said to me early on in the relationship, she said, "Have you ever been tested for anything like ADHD?" And I was like, "No." She said, "I'm no expert, but she says there's something not right with you." And I don't mean that in a kind of, a nasty way, but something's a bit different about the way your logic and how you react to things. So I did a load of sort of questionnaires. I spoke to a GP. He says, "Look, we can investigate it further," but he says, "These are the questionnaires we give to people." He says, "Do them, see how you fare, and answer them as honestly as you can." So I did several, and they all come back about 99% that I've got ADHD. So that explained a lot, and how my life's gone, and how I've thought, and why I have these ups and downs. So what I mistook for mental health was in fact symptoms of the ADHD. And now I know, I'm not a big fan of labels, but if it helps people understand their own brains. So now I understand how I think and why I do the things I do, and why I fidget, why I'm restless, why I always seek out different challenges. There's a million and one different things, but they're all, like, I can start 8 jobs in the house and not finish ever. I'll have a fridge open, I'll be hoovering, hanging washing out, I'll be doing all, and none of them will get finished, and that's just one of the things. So my missus, bless her, she kind of, she's learned a lot of, well, she does as well, yeah, but she's learned a lot about it to kind of understand it herself, so she can not lose a shit with me and go, I know why he's doing that. But like I say, it helps me understand. So no, the mental health thing, I've been very, very lucky that it's not affected me. I'm not saying that it's going to in the future, but
hopefully not. Yeah.
No. And for years and years ago, you got labelled a naughty kid. And if I go back to school, I had it as a kid. I was called hyperactive by teachers. I got suspended from primary school at 11 years of age for being the naughty kid. But it, you know, you look back, and I'm not saying that you should still be disciplined, because I was, and that's the right thing to do, but perhaps back then it wasn't recognised as much. You were just a naughty kid. But my brain, and it's how I learn as well, you know, how I learn. I find the obviously we go on to the fire service, but going through fire service training, all the classroom stuff, I watch around people writing and nodding. I'll be like, I ain't got a clue what to talk about here. And that's been a thing throughout. I was like that at school. I've got no qualifications whatsoever from school, because I find it difficult to learn when it's a classroom. There'll be and people, it's going in, people are asking questions. I'm like, it might as well go in here and out here. Yeah. And it's just a sort of lack of concentration. The thing that's good about, in my opinion, with ADHD is you can become hyper focused and hyper kind of fixated on something, and you will make it work. And whatever I've kind of decided I'm going to do, I've made it work, because it becomes an obsession. But if you're not interested, on the flip side, doesn't matter how much you get pushed into doing it, whether that be DIY, which is a bugbear of my fiance, I will not get into it. I can't do it. I've got no interest, so you're wasting your time, you know. So
that's the trouble with schools, isn't it? And I grew up being a young kid in the 70s, and they teach you what to think.
But they do, what they do is they kind of, the curriculum is probably, you know, good for maybe 80% of the kids, but you'll have that 20%, probably even more, where they don't learn the same way. And that's just because they don't learn the same way. It doesn't mean they don't have the intelligence. They just can't take in the information. And you get so many people that have got other skills outside the curriculum that are never, ever kind of utilised, because they don't notice them, or they haven't got the time to kind of focus on them.
All right then, Chris, what about the fire service then? What year?
Prior to the fire service, I did anti-piracy.
Tell us about that.
So I just did 3 years anti-piracy off the coast of Somalia. Pretty uneventful, pretty boring stuff, but again, good money. You know, encountered pirates a couple of times, fired a few warning shots, took out a few engine blocks, that sort of thing, you know. It was steady, but I got to be kind of, some of the places, I got stranded in Madagascar for five days once, just off the cuff. Went in a nightclub, the guy on the door had an Uzi as security, as I sit here on my life. So yeah, I found myself kind of traveling a bit, Tanzania for a bit, Oman. I spent a lot of time in Sri Lanka. So I got to travel in all these kind of weird and wonderful places through the anti-piracy. But it was a bit very kind of lonely. The last ship I ever did, I was about 10 weeks, only English speaker. So I'm all right with my own company to a certain extent. But 10 weeks when you're the only English speaker and there's cockroaches everywhere and the food's atrocious, you're a bit like, yeah, there's a bit more to life than this.
Were you on their ships, or was you on a...
So I'd work for I was on their ships, yeah. This was a Chinese ship, so I basically get put on any ship that required security through a company. I was working for a company based in South Korea, and we had a villa in Sri Lanka. I spent a lot of time in Sri Lanka. Sometimes I'd wait 2 weeks for a ship in Sri Lanka, and then I'd jump on one and go all over the place just to secure it, up through the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, Babel Mandip stretch was common for pirates to attack and stuff like that. So yeah, good. It was good money. I tended to try and work 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off if I could, but sometimes they kind of delay. But it was around this time I was doing all sorts on the way back. I'm conscious, I know obviously time and stuff like that, but I kind of, in between working away, I did private investigation and surveillance. So I did a surveillance course for a guy called Peter Jenkins, ex-Marine, based in North Yorkshire. And then I started doing surveillance. Now, I'd worked for BBC, did Rogue Traders. You remember the programme Rogue Traders?
I do, yeah.
So I did all the background, a lot of the background work for Rogue Traders, investigating dodgy plumbers that were robbing old ladies. So I'd take all the photos, I'd do survey on my own in a clapped out Mondeo and watch these guys find out the key codes to which entrance they went in. So when the crew come in, they knew where they were going from, where they were a bit of a pattern of life kind of thing. So I did that kind of for quite a while. And then my only claim to fame, the people at work get so bored of me telling this story, but the truth, I've done 2 high profile surveillance job. One was for a well-known chef that swears a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been on a podcast before, I never said his name, but it was Gordon Ramsay. I don't see why I've not said it. It's years ago.
Yeah.
So he kind of employed me through a company to follow his father-in-law around London. And so in 2010 in the Daily Mail, the story's all in there. His father-in-law was kind of doing things. He was a shareholder in the company. And he was kind of having money away, allegedly, and having an affair with someone in the company. So I got tasked with following his father-in-law around London, got all these juicy snaps that were all in the Daily Mail. Again, it's 100% true. I've tried to get hold of Gordon Ramsay and say, look, you know, he paid me $2,000 for them 10 days, but through his company and that. So I always say, if he ever sees any of these, I'd like a free meal at one of your restaurants, because I won him millions in court through the work I did. And that were on my own as well. So, and then the other one's a very famous footballer, but I'm still to this day sworn to secrecy, because I'm in contact with him, and he says he's going to have me down on his podcast to talk about the story.
Cool.
So at some point that might come out a bit more, but again, that one's quite an interesting story.
I can keep a secret.
Yeah.
Don't you worry. Had a bit of training in there. So then, fire service after that.
Yeah.
What gave you that light bulb moment?
I always wanted to be a firefighter. I kind of friend's dad, back even when I was kind of early teens, was a firefighter, and I kind of something I've always, you know, firefighters are always someone I kind of looked up to, helping the community, and kind of working in the community, and so I tried right from leaving the army right up until 2013, 3 attempts over a 10-year sort of period. And then I finally got in 2013 after I finished this sort of close protection, anti-piracy. And joined the fire service. And you know what? All the fitness I have done over the years, and training and everything else, because every job I've ever done has required quite a high level of fitness. I joined the fire service, which is probably not up. The fitness is, but it's not perhaps as hard as the paras and stuff like that. But so week 1, I go out and do a run, and I severely grade 2 tear my groin. So I'm like, it took me 10 years, 3 attempts. I've got to week 2 of the fire service course after doing P Company 3 times, and I've torn my groin sprinting up an hill. And my whole groin went black. I had to tape my leg up, and it would look like we're going to get back squatted. They were like, if you can't do the training course, the 17-week training course, you're going to be off the course, and we're not running another course for years. So taped it up and just cracked on and hobbled my way through it. And I've had nothing but dramas ever since because of that. So I can't run anymore because of that. And so it is what it is. But I got in. And I don't regret it. I kind of, 11 years I've been a firefighter now.
Is it still 17 weeks?
No, my course was, I don't know why my course was 17 weeks. They're usually about 12 weeks. But for whatever reason, mine was kind of extended. I think it was some incidents with previous courses that they decided to have a longer course. And I think they're back to 12 weeks now. It weren't because we were all idiots. I stand by that. Well, it might have been. I don't know. It could quite be there.
They never told you, Chris.
No, they never told me, no.
So I know very, very little about fire service with regards to the course-wise. I couldn't imagine certain things. I've seen Blue Peter.
Yeah, the fire service course is actually, you know what, and because I've been out of the military quite a few years, by the time I went through I didn't know what to expect. It was a bit of a shock to the system. If I'd have done it straight after the paras, it'd probably been fine, but I'd had these years of doing the close protection where they are like the military, but the discipline side of it, as in polishing your boots, and it's not like that. Yeah. So all of a sudden I'm thrown into this environment where I've got to ball my shoes, And I never bought any shoes while we were in the military. It's not a Power Edge thing. So everyone's coming to me and going, how do you bull shoes? How the fuck do I know? It was like, I didn't know. So, you know, obviously the ironing of kit and stuff, I was on top of a bit, where there's some people there that have never ironed a bit of kit in their life. So yeah, you prayed on every morning, you get inspected. And then our course, you're in the classroom doing your kind of theoretical side of learning. And then most of the afternoon you'd be out on the drill yard throwing up ladders. And you are constant getting beasted. It's a long day. It's hot. Fire kit is brilliant for stopping fire, but it also doesn't let the heat out, so you're in like a little boil in the bag. So you're running around in that. This was sort of September time, still quite warm. So yeah, you know, it's interesting, and it is tougher than people kind of think. You do a kind of a breathing apparatus course that's like 2 weeks, and that is cheeky. They run you ragged in there, and you've got a mask on. It's positive pressure, so you know you have to suck to breathe in. Some people struggle because it gets a bit claustrophobic. You know, there's real burns. They set pallets on fire, so it's really hot, and it is taxing, very, very taxing. And there's a lot, and I will always stand by this. There is a hell of a lot to learn. Fire science, you learn about how obviously fire, how it reacts in different kind of things. So yeah, it's a good course. It's a lot to take in, and I had to do a lot of studying. There were some people that never went home and revised. They just took it in. I had to go home and I sit for hours revising to pass the tests and stuff. Because again, I don't learn in a classroom environment. I never have. So I used to learn and do it my way, which meant learning out of hours, you know.
Yeah, I get you.
The instructors I had were kind of old school as well, so there was a lot of screaming and shouting and a lot of running you around. And if you messed up, you'd be around the tower carrying the ladder and stuff like that. So yeah, it was very physical. A lot more physical than but I was at I had a VO2 max then of about 67, which is the same as a Premiership footballer. So I was fit. I trained 3 times a day on the ships before, as I knew I was getting into the fire service. Yeah. So I knew I was fine. I did a 14.7 on the bleep test, so I was fit. That side, you know, I could do that all day. And then obviously my groin went, and I was like, great, but I still hobbled through it. But yeah, I never missed anything, never failed anything. I was taped up and held together with masking tape. I'm even more held together with masking tape now, I can assure you. It's under my jeans now. I've got masking tape holding me together. If I take these off, my leg comes off.
There's been a slight negative stance with fire service over the last few years.
Yeah.
You know, these guys are sitting around for hours and still getting paid. I think that's bullshit, because you've got to be prepared. You don't know when an emergency is going to come in.
There is, and like I've spoke to everyone, and obviously gone are the days of kind of sleeping on nights. Now some services still do it. Our beds got rid of a few years ago. We don't have beds and stuff like that. I'm not going to sit here and say that we don't have, you know, a bit of shut eye in a chair or something like that, because we do. It's human nature. But that environment, you going to bed at 10 o'clock and getting up it's non-existent anymore. And I've spoke to members of the public, and they're like, well, good on you. You know, if it means you're coming to a house fire at 2 o'clock in the morning, you've had a few hours sleep beforehand. You know, I'm at a fairly busy station, and there's fire services that had a lot of bad press recently with kind of bullying and kind of and stuff. I can honestly say, in the 11 years I've been on, I've never seen it. I've never seen bullying. There's banter, like every organisation. There is banter, but it's knowing when that banter. We're all adults. People know when it's too far, and there's not bullying. And there's harassment. Some services, I can't speak for everyone, but I've never witnessed it, and that's the truth.
It's a British thing, isn't it?
It is.
You
do. Everyone takes the mickey out of each other, and I see it as a coping mechanism. Most people understand that. Whether they want to admit that is a different thing. But again, you know, things can always go too far, and then it has to be reined in. Of course it is. But there is banter, and it helps people deal with certain. But it's just judging your audience and kind of knowing what's inappropriate and what's not inappropriate. And that's just common sense. But obviously, some people don't have. Yeah. It's not that common, is it?
It's not.
But no, I mean, it has a bad rep from all this kind of stuff. But I'm not such on the politics side of stuff. But it was weird because we got a pay rise with the kind of threat of strike action and everything else, and then as soon as we had the pay rise and that were all settled, all these allegations started coming out. So I just think, okay, funny how the timing with that. But again, I can't speak for every other service. I just know I've not witnessed anything that I would deem what they're saying. But, you know.
What about women? Is there any...
My fiancée is a firefighter.
Is she?
Yeah.
Good on her.
Yeah, big advocate, very good firefighter. She was on my watch for about 5 years. We're on the same shift pattern. It worked.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. It worked. It did work. People always say, how do you work with your missus? But you know what? We got on really well. And she's recently moved to a different station, and it's weird now not working with her.
Why did she move?
She's just going down the career path and kind of just to change the scenery. I think she's gone to a station that's quite near where we live.
She's not trying to tell you something.
No, I did say that to her. I was like, why have you moved? It took you 6 years for me to piss you off. But she denies that. So, no, I think she wanted to change, and I think she's kind of looking at different avenues as well within the fire service. So, but yeah, it is a good job. I like it. And it's still probably one of the only jobs out there that I find that you can get that buzz. Because going into a house fire, I had one quite recently, when it's kind of red hot, it's pitch black, and it is daunting, but it gives you that adrenaline, that adrenaline buzz going into a house fire or any incident. And it's still up there with being shot at or being blown up or boxing. When you go out them doors on a fire engine with blue lights, it's a good buzz, and you feel like you're doing good. You know, you are. You know, you pull someone out of a house fire, or you go in an incident and you save someone's property, or you save a building, or you save a pet, or cut someone out of a car. It's a bit of a sense of, I've given something back here, and I like that. I do like that feeling, and you do serve your community, and I like that aspect about it. So there's never this kind of sat around like people lead you. Some of the quiet stations maybe, but you always find something to do. Also, you test all the equipment every day, or different routines. So it might be fire engine test day. It might be, we've got a special called an aerial ladder platform. So it might be test day on that. You have to take it on the yard, do all the maneuvers with it, make sure it works. And obviously you carry a lot of stuff on a fire engine, and that has to be tested and maintained. And obviously our role is ever expanding. But years ago it used to be fighting fires. Then it led on to road traffic collisions. We've got water rescue capability now. We have chemical rescue capability. We've got animal rescue and all the different specials. So the job's ever growing, But that 40-degree summer, you went home and you felt like you'd put a shift in. Because I remember one day being on station about 15 minutes. It would call after call after call. And you went home and thought, you know what, I've really made my money today. And I feel like I made a difference, because you'd stop, hedges would be going up, spread into houses, and you'd stop it and save someone's house. So, it's a reward. It is a rewarding job. And I kind of still, as much as we have our gripes about it, and everyone has their gripes about all their professions, I've never felt like it. Some people dread going to work. I never ever feel that I dread or get up in the morning and go to work. I genuinely enjoy my job, so I love my job.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
You've got a great team around you.
A brilliant watch.
You can tell me the truth now.
Yeah, no, genuinely. I'd tell you, don't you worry about that. I don't have a filter. You've probably realised that already. But no, I've got a great watch. I've been on that watch. I've never moved. I came out of training school. I've been on that watch for 11 years. And it's a bit of a blessing and a curse, because it is a good watch. We all get on really, really well. It's almost hampered promotional kind of thing. I had aspirations when I got in to go up the ranks. I'm not bothered anymore. I'm happy being a firefighter. I do bits and bobs on the outside when I'm not at work, as in the podcast and stuff. Suits my lifestyle. So yeah.
You don't want to be sitting in an office banging out.
You get to that. I'll never get to that level anyway. I don't think. I ain't got the intelligence.
No, mate. What are some of the most dramatic experiences then from firefighting?
God, well, there's all sorts of bits and bobs. I mean, I kind of say before I come back to the 9 lives thing and the kind of dodging stuff. So my first ever house fire, it's always good to get them out of the way, You kind of wait. You don't want to be waiting too long, because it's like, what's it going to be like? Very different to on a drill yard and in the BA house practicing than it is at a real house fire.
How am I going to react when it's a real
Exactly. And I've always said it before. I go out on the drill yard and I'm very chilled out on the drill yard, we'll do the drill. And I'm paying an interest in doing it, but there's a bit of a laugh around it because it's a drill. But I feel like I come into my own when you're on an incident. 2 o'clock in the morning, there's flames coming out, there's people hanging out a window. I switch on. Everyone does. Yeah. You know, it becomes very different. And everyone, you don't even have to talk. Because you've done that much training, you don't have to talk. Things are happening simultaneously. Ladders are coming off, hoses are getting out, someone's getting a hydrant. You know, people are putting BA sets on and getting ready to go in, and it's just like it's actually, if you took a moment to sit and watch, you'd be like, wow, that's and it. I hope the public kind of can appreciate that. You know, I think they do. We're always welcomed with open arms by the public. They've always been very, very supportive of the fire service. But yeah, first house fire I ever went into, we were briefed to go in and go left. But the fire looked like it was in the top window. You know, always taught never to go above a fire because obviously you can end up getting trapped. So you fight the fire and then you send in a second team that will do the searching. As long as that fire is being babysitted, you can probably send someone above it. It's not a problem as such. There's certain rules that can be bent, but one of the unwritten rules, you don't go above fire. So we went in and we missed the door on the left. First fire, I've got a red diamond on my arm, which means I'm a probationer. So you have these red diamonds on the side of your helmet, so people can see, yeah, he's brand new, doesn't know a clue what's going off. And we went in and we missed the door. We went straight on, and it was quite a long hallway. Just did a bit of searching and everything else, and we should have gone left, round the living room and into the kitchen. That's where the fire was, but it looked like it was because of the smoke. It looked like right at the top bedroom. So we were making our way towards the stairs, and there was a massive explosion. And you have something called a DSX, and it's like an alarm. So all your DSXs are going off, whistles are being blown. So we scurry back to out the door. And they're like, "Oh, there's been an explosion." I was like, "We heard it." And what had happened is, if we'd have gone left and round the living room like we should have done, and walked into the kitchen, there was a massive bag of cylinders that had exploded, and it had blown the window 20 foot up the garden. Jeez. So we'd have walked straight into that. So, you know, talking to my BA partner at the time was a very experienced firefighter, who's still in now, absolutely very, very switched on firefighter. And he says, it was a mistake by us both. I should have realised it as well, but we went past this room. We never went upstairs as such. We got to the bottom of the stairs before we realised. But he says, that mistake, he says, I'm grateful I made that mistake, because we'd have got severely injured or killed if we'd have walked through that kitchen door onto the bag of cylinders. So, there you go.
Another one, Chris.
Another one, hey. I've done all right, haven't I?
Do you do the lotto?
No, I do, and I'm not one shit.
So what percentage then are your call-outs, you know, road traffic, rescuing?
I'm at a very, I'll say diverse station, because I am. You know, you get a lot of stations that are in your kind of, maybe the main one in Doncaster would be the same. You get a lot of calls, but a lot of them are alarms. So you get a lot of smoke alarms going off, or just false alarms. So you go out and you end up switching alarms. So it's a lot of calls. But as for working jobs, our station, so we get quite a lot of house fires. I believe, I don't know how true it is, it was a statistic that got thrown our way, that for a period of time, the year before last, Mansfield and Sutton, the neighbouring, that we kind of branched into as well, was the highest for fatalities in house fires in the country. Now that's because of probably a numerous things, poverty, all sorts of bits and bobs. So yeah, we kind of get a lot of house fires. We tend to get still RTCs as well, because we've got kind of a few major arterial routes around Nottinghamshire, and the A1's not too far away. And obviously the M1, some of the stations. But for us, it's mainly house fires. Bonfires that go out of control, people think, there's enough room there between that and the edge. Do you know what I mean? All sorts of bits and bobs like that. But what amazes me is the amount of people that's still out there that still don't have smoke alarms. And if you knew how much a smoke alarm, I was the same before I joined the fire service, but if you knew how much a smoke alarm does for you, and people see these movies, it always makes me laugh. You watch Backdraft, don't you? And, you know, people have got a tea towel around their mouth and they're going in to rescue people. No. You take a lungful of that hot, and it's not the gases itself, well it is, but because they're hot, they burn all your windpipe. So that all swells up, and it's a couple of lungfuls of that, you're unconscious. And the heat as well. I mean, I've been in house fires where my helmet This one, not another one, is blistered. That's another story. But yeah, no, your helmet's kind of blistered. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and stuff like that because of the heat, and you've come out and you're wet through. So yeah, it is tricky. It is demanding. And I always say what people don't realise as well, that there's something like a 5 times higher rate for a firefighter to develop cancer than a normal member of public because of the carcinogenics and the stuff that the contaminants that we're faced with. So they're big on decontaminating at the minute. You come out of a house fire, straight away you de-kit, it all gets bags sent off, you kind of showered within the hour. That's the theory. Not always still up to that, but we're getting there because, again, it's nasty stuff that you don't want to be.
My smoke alarm, I've stood under it with a cigarette and it's not gone off. But when I shower, there's all the water vapor.
And the steam, yeah. Beep, beep, beep. Well, there's different ones. You kind of get heat sensors. You get ones, I forget the different names, and I got taught it in training school.
Carbon dioxide.
Well, they're ones that you should have near your boiler. That's not something we do deal. We don't provide them, but we go out and do a lot of community work where we fit smoke alarms. We do a lot of our work now is based around community work. So we go out in the daytime and do what's called safe and well visits. So we'll literally go out, give fire safety advice to usually vulnerable people, maybe single people or elderly, and then fit them free smoke alarms and make sure that they've got, because that smoke alarm is essential. And I still come across people now, my age, younger, older, that'll go, I ain't got any. You're like, really? Because you wear that smoke alarm, they are sensitive, depending on which one you get. And that'll give you the early warning to get out. You don't want to be in an house fire, it's horrendous. Seen firsthand many, many times.
Yeah, I gather. I was once coming home about 2 a.m. from the pub, and I had a house that was on a hill, and it looked like it was on fire, flames 20 feet up. So I went to the Chinese and got a meal because I thought, well, waste time going home, it's on fire. And the woman says, hey, are you all right? I says, yeah, my house is on fire. You what? You what? I says, can't do anything about it. Got up the hill, and fortunately it was next to us. A workman had been in, left a blowtorch.
Really?
Yeah, but I was thinking, insurance?
Yeah, again, I kind of been involved with someone, and then fire investigation gets involved with them, and they do one of the dogs that they have. The FI dogs are incredible. They can smell like a droplet of accelerant from God knows. We tried it at part of training school. They'll get you all stood around the drill yard, and drill yard's probably 200-300 meters across or 100 meters across, or whatever it is, and get you all scattered, and you put one drop of paraffin on one of your shoes, and you stand and the dog will find you, or even something less smelling than paraffin, and the dog will come and sit at your feet. So yeah, for anyone that thinks they can get away with arson, you can't.
Thanks for telling me that, Chris.
Yeah, just in case you were thinking about it.
So you've been on, is it 11 years, did you say?
11 years, yeah.
11 years. What got you into podcasting then?
A bit like what I kind of said. There was a bit of, I kind of dabbled with boxing and stuff, and I know of a couple of boxers along the way that have kind of taken their own life. Obviously I know of quite a few guys from the military. Some have taken their own life, sadly, and some are kind of really struggling with PTSD and mental health. And I am trying to push the mental health thing with the podcast, and I'm also trying to just kind of get the messages out there that you've got to seek help as well. It's a bit of a two-way street, because if no one knows you're struggling, then no one can do anything for you or help you. So the idea behind the podcast is, obviously I've had all this stuff going off, and there's other reasons as well. I wanted to talk. I always fancied doing a podcast. I always fancied talking to some of the older Falklands veterans, and it kind of led on from there. But one of the main goals was for the mental health. Just to get people kind of talking, and my idea was that if I can get soldiers on, or firefighters, or people in the kind of emergency services world, carry people that I think, well, they must be mentally tough, or they're strong, big and strong, or mentally resilient, or then if people can see them talking about their mental health, then surely that will encourage them. If they can talk about it, surely I can be a bit more open, or certainly seek help. So that was the kind of avenue I went down. So I started in February. It's done all right. It has done all right.
Growing quickly.
It's growing. It's getting there. I've had the help of a couple of podcasters that have kind of helped me. I'm of the same sort. We spoke about this before. I'm not sort of. I have had some kind of walls up against me with that, where people have gone, oh no, it's a confliction of interests. And my argument's always been, there's 7 billion people in the world, there's enough listeners and enough love to go around. So your podcast that I'm on now and grateful for has a different level of guests, and people tell different stories, and some people might find that interesting. My podcast is aimed at probably a different audience, or maybe slightly different guests, or same guests but might have a different story to sell. So I'm a big kind of believer there's enough for everyone. And I'm helping. I'm going on another couple of podcasts at a really kind of small level at the minute to try and to help them and do what this guy kind of did for me as well, by kind of really getting a lot of his subscribers across to help me. Nice. So, and his name's Trevor Colt. We talked about him before. Kind of nice guy.
And he's a funny bloke. He's got a great sense of humor.
Oh yeah, he's a really nice guy. He's had a bit of bad press.
Yeah.
He has a bad press, but you always get that. And I've said before, some of his views in kind of there'll be people watching this that don't agree with some of the things I've said, and people can be controversial and everything else. But that's the beauty of it. You don't have to agree with the people that you have on. You just kind of have to respect. And I respect his views. I don't agree with all of Trevor's views, that some of the stuff he comes out with. It is sometimes controversial, but And some people did message me and say, I can't believe you got him. He's not a very nice person. And I was like, I'll be the judge of that. And he's been absolutely sound with me. He's really helped me push the podcast. I'm still in touch with him now. I'm hoping to go on his podcast at the start of September and have a chat with him about kind of my experiences and various other things. So, yeah, I take it. I will have all sorts of guests on it. As long as, I will disagree with them. It's not all to be, you can't agree with everyone, can you?
No. All.
You've got to respect people's views, haven't you?
It makes an interesting world.
Of course it does, yeah. It would be very boring if we're all the same, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Can you tell the public about a couple of guests that you're having on?
Well, I've got, I'm in talks with Jim Davidson. So I'm talking to Jim Davidson. I've got the feelers out for John Lydon from the Sex Pistols. I'm hoping he kind of gets me. Dave Radband, military guy. Yeah. I'm hopefully got him on in the near future. And again, I've Ian Dilks, the kind of interrogator from the SES program.
Yeah.
So, there's a few lined up. And the lesser known ones, again, the midweek kind of podcast is more about the kind of mental health, everything mental health related. So I've got just ordinary people with ordinary stories. In fact, one's gone out today, local lad, John Bell, that kind of, lost his son, at a young age, and he's done some crazy walks with carrying a bathtub dressed as Deadpool, and Ryan Reynolds get hold of it. So, and, speaking to him, just his positivity and optimism are just incredible. So yeah, the midweek podcast is all about everything mental health, people with their own stories and how they've gone on to kind of combat them, and in a lot of cases set up charities or raise money or just put stuff back. And then obviously the Sundays are for the life stories and guests. I have got loads of different guests hopefully in the pipeline, but it's finding the time and trying to get it all squared away.
Which other countries would you say had, there's no one equal as the Paras, but saying shock troops, which...
Well, the US, we've worked hand in hand with the US, haven't we, for years, and I've done quite a lot of training exercises with...
88 and 101.
Yeah, and also sort of Green Beret, not Green, some of the Rangers. I think we worked with I worked with a German Fallschirmjäger on exercises as well. And they are good units, but I remember quite famously working with a Fallschirmjäger which were the first paras by all accounts back in the Second World War. There's a lot of respect for the German Fallschirmjäger within the British Parachute Regiment because of what they achieved, and they were a good fighting force. Yeah. But I remember we did a training exercises with them, and they got lost in Brecon, and the climate in Brecon Beacons kind of got to them and to call off a bit of the exercise because some of them had gone down. So yeah, you take for granted.
Can get a bit nippy up there.
Oh God, yeah. In February it can, yeah. I don't miss them days, I'll tell you that for nothing. Salisbury Plain as well on February. I always used to hold this exercise on Salisbury Plain in February. And it were horrendous. It rained, it were frosty, and it was... I look back that. Now, there's a funny story. So during the first kind of lockdown before it proper kicked off, it was my girlfriend's 30th birthday. She's a bit younger than me. I'm a lucky man. For my fiance. I'm in trouble now because I said girlfriend, not fiance. So I took a bit of wild camping. So obviously it was like ex-paratrooper. Been a while since I'd done that, but so I set up a little camp for her and took her out into these woods and nice view, set up a meal. You know what? I had the worst night's sleep. It were like every little noise, like, what's that? Sounded like they were like a rhino, and they were a field mouse. I had a torch on a field mouse. My fiance always laughs about this. I was on a torch and there's this field mouse looking at me. But it scared, honestly, I was like, I couldn't sleep. I was uncomfortable. And she was like, you sure you was a paratrooper? And I told the lads at work, the lads and lasses at work, and they were like, yeah, you've definitely kind of, it's not for you anymore, is it? And it's not, you get softer as you get older, don't you? And I
got stared down by this mouse.
Yeah, this mouse. Oh, I had teeth, I tell you. Honestly, it was scary. But yeah, it's funny how times change, isn't it?
And you were a good boxer, weren't you?
I was all right. I weren't bad. I got into it a bit late. I did a bit in the military when I was in, and then I was about 32 just before I joined the fire service, where I did a white collar in Nottingham, and I thought, I kind of like that. I did all right. A big black youth, 6'6". I didn't know who I was fighting. He's a lovely lad, but he was built like a barn door, and I found out we're fighting him on the night. Someone went, that's your opponent. I was like, oh, great. So I went in there, windmilled, got a draw. And then I kind of got into it in the fire service, started fighting for the fire service, and then that led on to the unlicensed scene, won a couple of sort of chocolate belts at unlicensed level, area kind of heavyweight. And it came to a bit of I had like a prize fighter. I fought 3 guys in one night. Wow. All 3 of them, sort of the closest guy to me had 18 fights. I'd had 4 at the time. A guy called Jody Meekle, he'd had 75 pro fights. I beat him on points. And then I lost in the fights. The only loss I got out of 14 fights. He went on to be ranked 18th in the UK as a pro. Heavyweight, Danny Whitaker, big lad. But yeah, I had the last one April this year for the fire service. And it went 52 seconds. I knocked him out in 52 seconds. Uh-huh. But in that time, 52 seconds, I still managed to pull an hamstring and hurt my shoulder. So when I walked away from that, I was like, you know what? I am done. 52 seconds, and I managed to kind of ruin myself. So I was like, I'm 44 now. I need but you probably know yourself, you feel in your head, don't you, that your body can do these things, and you feel like, I can't do it anymore. I can't. I know there's been a big topic at the minute about, is it called conscription, isn't it? Where you kind of, they're on about like forcibly getting people to join up. And there's been a lot of backlash. Now, I don't feel that joining the military because you're forced, or certainly if you're forced going into basic training for the proper military. But I do believe there's a lot of skills and life skills you can learn from joining the military. And I'm a big advocate. Not necessarily with the being forced, but certainly I'll say to 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old lads, it sets you up for life. All the skills in life that I have learned and all my mindset and everything that I've kind of done thereafter stemmed from the military. And obviously my upbringing from my parents and stuff like that, but the military, the discipline side of it, the life lessons, the camaraderie, the teamwork, all those things set you up for life.
All right, then, Chris. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Best wishes.
Cheers, pal.